Hello and welcome to this webinar presented by World Intellectual Property Review and Brandstock, a provider of intellectual property services. I'm Conlon, editor of World IP Review, and I'll be your chair for the session. In this webinar, we'll be talking about how to ensure your trademark portfolio is in the best possible shape using a two-part verification and audit process to save you time and money on your IP rights, as well as analyzing your current and planned costs and guiding your filing strategy in the new year. Before I introduce the speakers, I would like to say thank you for signing into this webinar today. We're very excited to be with you, and I'm delighted to welcome three distinguished experts to share their experience with you. I must remind the audience that first, I'd like to thank Brandstock for its support for this webinar and our speakers, Alessia Parassina of Brandstock, Angela La Marca of fashion brand OTD, and Guido Chiavelli of children's wear company Gufo. Throughout the webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our speakers. Each speaker will speak, and then following those presentations, there will be a question and answer session chaired by me. If you want to submit questions, you can do so at any time via the field on your right-hand side. Questions are submitted anonymously, but if you'd like to identify yourself for a follow-up after the webinar, please note your name in the question too. We'll be hosting two polls during the webinar today. The first will be open when I finish my introduction, while the second one will be open when I make an announcement later on. The first question will be, are you sure your IP portfolio data is correct? I will announce the second question later on. So, to our speakers. First we have Alessia Parassina, a lawyer at Brandstock. She's been working for more than 10 years in well-known law firms specialized in trademark and copyright matters, counterfeiting and trademark portfolio audits. In 2013, she became part of the Brandstock Group as one of the lawyers responsible for large international brands. Angela La Marca is IP counsel for OTB, the parent company of iconic fashion brands including Diesel. Guido Chiavelli, our third speaker, is from Gufo. He leads the company with his younger sister, Alessia. He joined in 1997, first in the IT and logistics section of the company, then managing worldwide distribution through a network of agents, importers, franchise partners, and direct retailing, before taking on his current role. Now I will hand over to Alessia, who will introduce her presentation.
Dear Ed, many thanks for this wonderful introduction. First of all, it is a pleasure to be here in front of this audience and to introduce myself and my experience in what we call the data verification, or let's say data auditing, and maybe for the majority of you this part of the procedure is known as due diligence procedure. So I would immediately start with, let's say, the first question that we have in our presentation, which is a very important and interesting, of course, question to all companies in all fields. We have two representatives of, let's say, the fashion industry, but it could, of course, apply to any field. The agrochemical, the alcoholic field, the tobacco field. It's a general message. Of course, we are constantly put under pressure how to save money, how to make our budget more efficient, not how to spend less money, but how to spend it better. So in these terms, also the title of our first slide is how to immediately save the money on your TM portfolio. And the answer is proceed with the data verification. As I told you, data verification is the name I give to this process. You may have heard about due diligences, trademark audit. These are synonyms for, let's say, the same procedure. And let me allow to go into details of this procedure. To give you in short, let's say, which are the details of such a verification or due diligence, as you may prefer. As the name says, verification, so we verify. And what do we verify in our trademark portfolio? We verify, of course, the trademark, but not just the trademark. We verify what it is connected. I usually compare the trademark as a little child and the trademark life as the life cycle of a human being. So you check, for example, the age, you check name and surname, you check the experience, you check at which part of his life or his experience he or she is. And here we have the same. For the trademark, we do not just check the trademark itself, we check the owner, we check the address, we check the list of goods, the status, and then more and more in detail, application number and date, the registration number and date. But of course, we cannot forget other important information like the priority claim, the existence of eventual seniorities, the existence in the experience of this trademark of eventual refusals, opposition, connected agreements, license agreements. So these are all information which could be checked and can be checked depending, of course, on the extent of the portfolio and depending on the extent of the verification project you want to have. Of course, everything can be double-checked, and the point is just which is the scope of your verification. You just want a very, let's say, plain or simple verification, then the data I have listed are usually the more important ones. Do you want to go more in detail? As I said before, I want to know if the trademark had an opposition or a refusal or if there is an agreement. That can also, of course, be checked during a similar procedure. And in fact, the extent can be decided by the company together, of course, with the consultant, and needs to reflect the company's needs. Depending on the current situation, such a data audit or trademark verification or due diligence can be, of course, tailor-made depending to the needs. And the needs, of course, are linked and depend on which is your goal. The goal, or my experience has shown, of course, that the trademark verifications or very in-depth verifications are usually done, for example, when a portfolio is sold. So the seller does a trademark audit or data verification to show how good his portfolio is, but we will see it's not always the case. And the company acquiring the portfolio, of course, wants to double-check that that portfolio is really the money worth. And so they usually entrust another law firm or another service provider to check that this information is really that complete and that reliable. And as we said, the money they want to invest in buying that portfolio is really worthwhile. But again, the moment in time can be the different ones. Maybe you want to change service provider, you want to change law firm, and simply passing from law firm A to law firm B, you just want to double check that the work was done properly. Or, for example, the new law firm requires such a verification to be sure that the portfolio they are working on is really complete. So as we said, the explanation or the grounds for which you do such a data verification can be different. You are selling a part of the portfolio, you are acquiring a part of the portfolio, you just want to be sure, you want to trust someone else, you are merging with a different company, so of course it needs to be double-checked, but for any reason you want to do this kind of data verification, the important or the common element would be that, or the common background is that in theory, what experience has shown is that the portfolio is usually, unluckily, the longer it takes and the more trademarks you have, the less properly updated the portfolio is. This can happen for different reasons. For example, the portfolio is very old, so its roots date back, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, and so you had a lot of changes in the company, in the trademark management, in the, let's say, IP department. You had different people working on the portfolio, and of course different people, different hands, different criteria, and this is always shown in, let's say, the database. It could be that it was not well kept, it could be that some information were simply forgot, but the main rule we need to remind of and to be reminded of is that the less your portfolio is well kept, the more you risk, because you think, for example, you have a coverage in the United States, but you don't, because your declaration of use deadline was not docketed, you did not submit your declaration of use, and your mark is gone. Or you wish to oppose a trademark, let's say in Saudi Arabia, you are super convinced that you have prior rights in that country, and you don't. So you are blocked, and you have a third party's mark, which is kind of blocking you for the future. So again, the main rule to be reminded of is the less or the worse the updates were done, the risky the situation is for your portfolio. You cannot really rely on the list you are taking. You cannot rely on the information you are seeing. And this, of course, the more this situation comes familiar to you, the more data verification is urgent in your case. So, of course, for each problem, there is a solution, so I did not want to scare you. If what I told you sounds familiar, no panic. There is a solution, of course, and this is the data verification. Because within the data verification, you do a very simple comparison, like a mirroring. You have your data, which are provided in this verification exercise, and these data are checked usually towards online databases for those offices providing reliable databases. Not all online databases are reliable. One very good online database is the one of WIPO, of course. Another one is the one of the WIPO. USPTO has a wonderful database. The German database is very good. The Italian, although I'm an Italian lawyer, is not that well kept, but they are trying to do their best. So in these cases, of course, the comparison with the online database is the comparison with the real data the office has in its hands. Of course, not all countries are so, let's say, updated and online to grant to all people the access to their databases. In some cases, you could access, but you would not understand. I'm thinking of a Chinese database. I'm thinking of the list of goods in some databases in the Arabic countries. In that case, you need to entrust a local colleague. And of course, you need to entrust good local colleagues who would perform the check for you. Once the check is done, and as I said before, you can select which kind of data to be double-checked. So we could check everything, or you could have your colleagues checking everything. You just need to tailor-make your project depending to your goals and depending to your needs. For example, if you want to sell a given trademark portfolio, then it would be better to have everything checked, from the trademark to the owner, to the possible refusal, possible opposition, whatever, to give a complete information, because once the portfolio passes hands, the new owner, or let's say the company who's acquiring it, does not want to see any problems which could have been prevented via this verification. Once the verification is completed, of course, you can see the real status of your portfolio. And this real status shows to you in a very, let's say, easy-friendly layout, which I call the audit chart. You see very clearly where there are, let me allow this terrible word, mistakes. For example, you thought, according to your list, that a given trademark portfolio was owned by your company A, and unluckily it's still owned by company B. So apparently the assignment project you thought was recorded is not. Or, for example, you see that a number of trademarks you thought were active, so you thought were alive and you thought you could rely on, are dead. Sorry for this terrible word, but they are no longer able to provide you any protection. So, of course, again, don't be scared, there's always a solution. The first thing to be done once you see this information, inactive trademarks or trademarks still in the name of the wrong owner or wrong address, or basically it could also be that you did not know that these marks were still with an old-fashioned information, so not the correct owner in terms of not the actual owner or not the actual address, no problem. You should simply think of actualizing the status. So the first two steps would be removing the inactive marks from your database, closing the cases, for example, and entrusting your agents, your law firm, your service provider with assignment projects, if of course this is needed. But at least you would have the information. Having the information is everything in the actual world. You can also decide to not proceed, for example, with assignments or a changing of address. That's fine, but at least you have the information and you know what you have to rely to. So, but supposing you do not want a portfolio which is old-fashioned, not actual, not really reliable, you want that your portfolio is in good standing, you want it to be clean, you want it to be perfect. So usually this is a good chance not just to, as we said, close the old cases and proceed with an assignment or a change of address project. This is really a good chance to rationalize the portfolio. Within the audit chart I'm used to prepare for my clients, in one chart you see everything. You see the marks on top, you see the countries on your left, and with a very simple coloring method, you see in which countries you have protection for which classes. And this is really eye-catching. You know your portfolio, so you would immediately see, and what I usually hear is, oh, I did not think we had so many variations of that mark, or can it be that we really filed for this and this trademarks? Yes, it can. Because again, of course, this is not bad. It's normal in the company life, especially if the company has old roots, has a very long-lasting history, has a lot of trademarks. You cannot remember each trademark you have. This is perfectly normal. And of course, we all know that in given historical moments, the marketing or the business unit asks you to file for given trademarks. We all follow them, but at the end, these marks do not really add any value to your portfolio. They were just reflecting a given moment in time, but are no longer a value for you. So the question, returning to the initial one, would be, does it really make sense to pay for the maintenance of this mark? All companies are happy to invest in what gives them additional value, added value, and if a mark is, let's say, descriptive or no longer used or no longer of interest, then we should allow him to go. And in this sense, the rationalization we are thinking of can take place in different, let's say, steps, or in different, I would say, steps, which would be, the first one is, I would say, the basic one. So the bigger your portfolio is, the more the chronological order could or should be this one. So the first thing, as we said, one of the most common comments I hear is that I was not aware of having this, and this trademark. So, which shows to me that these trademarks, as we said, were probably filed in a given moment, but are no longer of interest. Get rid of them. Simply do not renew them or abandon them in those countries where the renunciation or the abandonment does not cost. Of course, we always have to keep an eye on our budget. Similarly to that, talking about budget when it comes to renewals, and so the second and the, let's say, third point on my slides are linked, you can decide, for example, to merge European national marks, which of course before the WIPO and back in time it was called OHIM was invented, all companies have just national European marks, but they are no longer, I would say, needed. Or why do we pay for a renewal in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, UK until it remains in the EU? If we can, for example, claim the seniority of this mark within the EUTM, this is a way of keeping the mark alive because it revives and it continues living within the EU mark, but we save on the renewal cost of the European national marks. And talking about renewals, again, this is the moment of the year where the renewals list of the marks are sent. Basically, the companies should already be ready, I would say, and then you can select. It's easy. You have a list of, let's say, big companies or middle big companies usually have 800 till 1,000 marks to be renewed per year. And my experience shows once they have this visualization, they decide the half thereof is not to be renewed this year, and this is a good exercise. You can already prepare for the next years because you see where you have protection, you can decide what you do not want, and you can, for example, put an internal deadline in your system saying not to be renewed as soon as due. but you would already reduce and decrease, let's say, the number of trademarks do we have, which brings me to the, let's say, more creative step, I would say. So far we are trying to reduce the number of trademarks, but the reduction is also done, reduction, or better said, rationalization, is done in order to save, and with these resources or with these savings, you can better invest this money, where, for example, in countries or classes or for marks which are more important to you. So this would be my first step, meaning that in this chart you immediately see, for example, class 35 is missing, or if by accident, mistake, or simply it was not done, a couple of important classes have not been filed. Usually this is less the case. When I talk about broadening to new filings, I refer to sitting together with marketing and the business unit and deciding to which sector or field you want to expand. For example, talking about the fashion industry, for example, Armani has a wonderful chain of restaurants and cafes, so Armani Nobu, for example. And of course, then in his filings, he should have added, and I think they did it, class 43, which was for sure not there at the beginning of the filings of the company. And in this sense, knowing what are your business plans and knowing in a one eye-catching chart, you would see immediately where you miss this class or these classes, of course, and you can extend, or these countries, of course. You know it. We are following a sort of waves procedure, so that for some years, for example, China, Japan, Vietnam were very important. China will remain important forever, but now in my experience, of course, also the Arabic countries are getting more and more space into the, let's say, the market and the importance in filing, so that we usually have really waves of applications in United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, but also African countries. So not just South Africa, you have Nigeria, which is very popular at the moment. So that it's really important. And of course, I understand the IP councils of companies or those taking care of the trademark portfolio. You cannot know this by your mind. I mean, the best would know all of their marks, but still it's very difficult to keep track of everything. And in this sense, to keep track of a portfolio or of a situation of your portfolio which is not actual makes less sense. You need to discuss with your manager, with your CFO, CEOs about budget, about increasing, for example, the budget, or we're talking about savings. Let's say not increasing, but investing it in different, better ways. But of course, to do so, you need an actual situation. You need the most current situation, and you need it not in an Excel which lasts 40 pages, but you need it into a one-shot page. And in this sense, this is what we can discuss on, and we usually also advise, or I usually advise also my clients, once you see this beautiful, I would say, allow me please the term, audit chart, where you see everything, you see all your marks. The way I usually visualize it is the first marks are the most important ones, divided per family. You know better than me that you always or usually do not just file one mark, you file different variations of the same mark. Once, for example, let me remain in the fashion industry, or let me take an example again from one Italian stylist, so Salvatore Ferragamo. Of course, the marks were not just Salvatore Ferragamo word, but it was, for example, Salvatore Ferragamo, the graphic signature. You had, for example, the signature in red with the white background, and then it goes further. Then you have the variation with maybe more descriptive terms. I'm thinking of Ferré jeans, for example, or Ferré in the mood of love. So I passed from Ferragamo to Ferré just to differentiate, but always remaining with Italian stylists. And of course, the more usually you go right in your chart, the less importance the mark gets or become. This, of course, follows what the company usually tells me, has told me, and what I also investigated. you can see that in this sense, if you have the Excel open on your computer, you could, or you have printed it, but in some cases this printing could take some meters if your portfolio is really big and you want to do that in A3 in a big size. You could eventually just drop the right side, ignore it, concentrate on the, say, left side, because the right side will be abandoned according to step 1, as we said before. Again, this Excel can be is very useful, as we said, for the broadening of the coverage. Let's say we concentrate on the left side of the chart, where we see where the coverage of our very important mark is there. Seeing it with colors in squares, you would see where your square is missing, as we said, class 35, class 43. Then we can just simply put, let's say, some thoughts on where to broaden the filing, and we would just do that. And in this sense, the new filings, the message was not to save just for the passion of saving, but to save to better invest for our company and give a better portfolio. In this sense, when we propose, for example, the new filings, or we think with the company of new filings, this is a good way to rediscuss, let's say, the fees you are paying for this project. And in fact, you usually, or you probably rely on your network of preferred local agents, which for sure are with you or with the company since years. Maybe some are new, but in any case, any project you have, of course, you need to take advantage, or you need to pay attention on the fees you are charged with for this project. And in this sense, if you plan new filings, or you remember a couple of steps back, we talked about assignments and changes of address projects. Well, even there, or renewals, of course, the more you reduce the renewal number, the less you would spend for it. But even if you spend for your 500 renewals per year and you want to do 300 filings and a couple of changes of name and changes of addresses, why should you pay more for this? And so in this sense, also a benchmarking exercise could be a good idea. The benchmarking exercise would basically compare the fees you are paying for the services I just listed with those which, for example, to our opinion or to the data in our hands, are the correct, or the, let's say, the average, which are the benchmark. That is what you should pay for a renewal in let's say, in a country or an assignment. I'm now seeing, I'm sorry, that exactly the last slide, which would be the last step I'm describing you regarding the benchmarking exercise, does not show off on your monitor, but I hope that my message still reached you. So again, to complete this exercise, let's say, of savings, you could also think of doing a similar exercise. So once you have cleaned up your portfolio and you have decided what to renew, where to file, or what to assign, it could be also a good occasion to see what the service would be really worthwhile paying for. And with this message, or with the ending message from my side so far, sharing with you the experience I had so far, that this trademark verification, the rationalization, and then the new project, also based on the benchmarking exercise, really help companies in not just reducing the cost, because this attention to the cost, it's basically not important, if not mandatory. If you just look at the money, you have to look at the broader picture, and the picture should be your portfolio should be well kept, in good shape, and ready, I would say, to be improved, shown, be relied on, or eventually to make business, of course, why not, sold to other companies. And so with this, let's say, positive message, I would pass back the word to Ed to continue with the presentation, and I thank you very much for your support and for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Alessia. That was a very interesting presentation. unfortunately there are some technical problems with the slides, which you may be able to see, and we are trying to fix them. So please do listen carefully, because at the moment the slides don't appear to be working properly. Although actually I think we may be able to fix the issue now, in fact, so I think we've now fixed the issue, sorry. Okay, so just a couple of things. We did open a poll at the start of the presentation. The question was, are you sure your IT portfolio data is correct? There have been lots of votes so far, and we will be closing the poll in about 1 or 2 minutes time. So if you would like to vote, you can do that now, please. And then the second question will be open for the audience to answer. The second question will be, how would you describe your interest in making savings on your IT portfolio management? High, medium, or none? So that question will be open in about 2 minutes time. But in the meantime, I'll now hand over to Angela Marca of OTB.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. First, I would like to introduce my company, which is OTB. It's an Italian-based, based in Italy, in Veneto, near Venice. It's the parent company of iconic fashion brands like Diesel, Maison Margiela, Marni, Paola Cademartori, and Victor and Rolf. You probably know better Diesel, which is a lifestyle company established in 1978, a leading pioneer in denim, and today a premium casual wear brand. Maison Margiela is a fashion company founded by Martin Margiela, and today the creative director is John Galliano. Marni is an unconventional fashion house based in Italy and distributed worldwide. Paola Cademartori is a luxury accessory company, and Victor and Rolf is a Dutch luxury fashion house. OTB is controlling those brands and also two state-of-the-art companies, S.p.A International and Brave Kids. Two companies producing under license for important brands as Maison Margiela, Vivienne Westwood, D-Squared, and Just Chiavelli. OTB has a turnover of 1.6 million euros. The employees' average age is 32, and the number of employees worldwide is 7,000. The company is controlling many brands, and here you can see a timeline with all the key milestones. The founder is Renzo Rosso. In the 70s, he founded Diesel, and then he purchased all the companies during the time, S.p.A International. Then he created Only the Brave. OTB stands for Only the Brave. And then he purchased Maison Margiela, Victor and Rolf. And in 2010, he opened a new headquarters in Veneto, Bregance, which is a little town near Venice. We built with the principle of eco-compatibility, with many facilities and services for the employees, like a kindergarten, auditorium, restaurant, bar, soccer and tennis fields. I would like to explain my role and my function within OTB. I'm in charge for handling all the IP matters and portfolios of each of the companies belonging to the group. The OTB is not itself owner of any IP, but controlling all these brands, has decided to centralize the IP function, the IP department. So now I'm in charge for handling all the matters involving the brands of the group. What we can do in-house? We for sure make all the job regarding IP, such as giving advices to all the brands, searches about the third parties' rights, preliminary opinion about possible new designs and trademarks. In case of litigation, we support the brands by sending cease and desist letters and by instructing law firm in case of court litigation. What we don't know from our headquarters and from our department is to directly handling the files. We we instruct an handling firm, an IP firm, to manage all the local agents, trademark agents, in charge for the management of our files and the registration and everything. So when we built a centralized IP department within OTB, we realized that we had to centralize all the all the law firms and IP counsels. Some years ago, so we started managing from OTB all the IP matters, and we decided to give benefit to our brands by uniform policy. So we extended to all the brands some services that previously were only used by one or another brand. For example, the online brand protection, the customs monitoring, or other strategy about brands. For example, by sharing strategies and good practice from a brand to another. Or, for example, for a specific problem, we were able to gain experience from one brand and use that experience also for other brands of the group. So in the end, we were able to apply the same policy with the same level of quality for IP services. However, when I had to take over the control of all the portfolios, I realized that each brand had their own IP firms. So we needed to rationalize the list of IP counsels. So as a part of the project of centralization and optimization of resources, we decided to launch the benchmarking. The benchmarking was since the beginning with a specific purpose. Not only rationalize and understanding the fees that we were paying for IP services, but also to select a network of local agents in charge for all our brands. So we wanted to apply the same favorable fees for all our brands, and this was possible only by launching a benchmarking project. The first step was to do this agent benchmarking. We decided to do the benchmarking only on local agents first in order to reduce the number of local agents. So we then analyzed all the results and we negotiated all the fees that the local agents were able to offer us. In the end, there was a selection of the external counsel based not only on fees but also on quality of services, and also on the behavior of the agents during the benchmarking, because some agents refused to participate, some others were not open to negotiate their fees, so we then decided to cancel those names from the list of our agents. As a result, we obtained in the end an optimization of the list of local agents with one external counsel for each country, acting and being instructed on behalf of all our brands. Now it is easier because we know what we pay, we know what to expect from each agent. We don't need anymore to negotiate any time the fees and everything. This is quite easy for us to budget, to have a budget for those services, and also to handle all the invoices and everything that we have to check once the activity is done. So also the agent is aware of how we want to work, because we have established a relationship with them, and so it's easier for both parties. When we started the exercise, we estimated a potential saving of about 10–30% of the annual spending in IT services. We are now in a phase that we are calculating this saving, but for the first information, it seems that we will expect to obtain to that specific saving, or hopefully even more. In this slide, you can see the original number of agents that we met during the benchmarking. On the right of the slide, you can see that 128 agents were listed in our original project. Then the negotiation involved 162 agents, because we decided to add some additional agents to cover new countries that were not covered by the original list. After the negotiation, we were able to reduce the number of agents to 71. So in the end, also under the country's point of view, we have optimized the way we manage the countries. In the beginning, we have 119 countries. Then we have 135 with the negotiation, again because we wanted to put new countries. And after the negotiation, we were able to reduce to 98 countries, because for one agent, we were able to manage more than one country, especially for some areas, like Middle East or East of Europe, etc. So my experience is that once you manage different brands within the same company, within the same group, you should ask yourself if you are checking your portfolio, if you are sure to have selected the right external counsel, or you are just using the ones that you have found used for years. Maybe you can ask yourself if it is better to check alone or with an external provider. My experience is that my exercise was quite complicated because we have to select many agents for many countries, and we started from a long list since, as I said, there were many brands involved. For sure, the goal should be to obtain savings, efficiency, and rationalization of the IP services. I thank you so much for this opportunity, and I would hand over back to Ed now.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation, Angela. I will now hand over to Guido Chiavelli of Il Gufo, who will provide the final presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm very pleased to participate in this webinar. Il Gufo is a much smaller and simple company compared to OTB, but the reason why I'm speaking to you today is that Il Gufo is not only a company but also and mainly a brand, and this is the most important value for our company. But let me tell you how it all started, because it's a nice story to tell. My mom founded Il Gufo back in 1980 without even knowing she would have owned a brand. But her passion for clothing, for nice, beautiful children's clothing, led her to create something that today means one of the leading luxury brands in children's wear all over the world. And since that time, many things have happened. I have joined the company 20 years ago, and I immediately realized how important it was to maintain and keep such an important value as it is our brand, because in our brand everything is included. The know-how, the passion for what we're doing, the Italian manufacturing skills that allow us to distribute our brand now to more than 45 countries in the world, and being recognized as the famous Made in Italy. We did not think it would be so important to have the control of our brand, and we do not have an internal office, a legal office, and we have outsourced since many years this service in order to be sure that everything was under control. Do the planning, the budgeting, and to be sure that every time we have a new market to open, a new agent to collaborate with, we are fully covered and perfectly managed. So we are very, very pleased with this choice, and we will continue for all the time to do so in the future. I am open to discuss and have questions if you wish, and I would just be available for any intervention. Ed, I would hand over to you now and leave some time for questions, which I think people will be ready to ask.
Okay, thank you very much, Guido. Okay, so we did have a poll that was open at the start of the webinar today. The question was, are you sure your IP portfolio data is correct? And 61% of those who voted said no. So 2/3 of people said no to that question. Now we also have some questions from the audience. The first question is, can the data obtained from a verification project be reinserted in our IP docketing system? So could perhaps one of the speakers please answer that question?
Thanks, Ed. Alessia speaking. I would take this over. Of course, the data coming out from a verification exercise or verification project can be transferred to the company's trademark management or docketing system. This is, in fact, you can imagine doing all the efforts and then not being able to transfer it. That would be, of course, not be the goal of the project or the goal of this exercise. So yes, the answer is affirmative, and the data can be easily transferred to any system you have. Thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you, Alessia. The second question is there a platform where I can see all the data at the end of the verification project?
Thanks, Ed. I think this is also for me, at least in the, let's say, verification, and thanks also to the person who posed the question, because he or she was referring to a platform. Maybe they already met Brandstock, because this is in fact how we do it. I was mentioning Excel, but the basic idea, we work with a lot of platforms, online tools, and one of the ways you can see the verified results is on our verification platform. From this platform, you can also extract Excel, so you can print them, show them in managers meeting. You can, of course, also show the platform itself, and it's very user-friendly, very simple, very basic, but also, again, very eye-catching, I would say. So both ways, and with the platform you can also play around, and again, the more information you want to see, the more, let's say, full your platform will be, and the less you want to see, the easy and light and slim it will look like. So thanks also for this question.
Okay, thank you very much again. The next question says, based on your experience with agent benchmarking projects, did you discover that external counsel were overcharging official fees?
Well, that's a good question. I allow myself to jump in again. Yes, in fact, historically seen, when we started to do benchmarking projects, this was exactly for that reason. We came out, or our clients, comparing the fees, you know, when you do quotes or cost estimate for a client, and then a client comes back to you and says, well, but in Saudi Arabia I was quoted 1,500 euro and you are now saying 800 euro. And we realized very quickly that this discrepancy was not just on the agent fees, which would be normal. There are lawyers who cost more, agent who cost less, so this is pretty normal, this is the market. But of course, one thing should not change. These are the official fees. They are official for one reason. However, the more benchmarking projects we did, the more we realized that some agents, not all of them, but quite a few, were overcharging. So putting, I would say, a buffer or exaggerating the official fees. So yes, indeed, unluckily, this is the case. So the benchmarking exercise, as we said before, as also Angela said, it's really a transparency exercise, not just for the agent fees, which of course we are in a free market, and so everyone can bill or propose to bill whatever they wish. Hopefully the service is then good enough, but the official fees should be fixed.
Okay, thank you again, Alessia.
Sure.
We do have another question, which it's more of a statement rather than a question. but somebody says it would have been interesting to see a few sample reports of yours. Is there anything you can say in response to that?
Of course. No, I would be pleased to show some samples of our audit charts and report. I would just ask the lady or the gentleman who posed the question, or anyone in the audience interested in seeing these samples, just write me an email. I will be pleased to send you over some samples of our audit charts so you can see them. And I'm of course willing and open to answer any then technical or practical question regarding the chart itself. Thanks a lot for asking.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the end of the questions there. Now I'll just invite the speakers to make any final statements if they have them. So I'll just allow Angela and Guido to make any final statements if they would like. Otherwise, I will then conclude the webinar.
No, thank you very much.
Oh, that's fine. Hello?
Okay, thank you very much. Great, so just to wrap up then, everybody, we did have a poll that was open during the webinar, and as I mentioned a brief time ago, the response to the question of, are you sure your IP portfolio data is correct? The answer was no, by a margin of 60% to 40%. So I would just like to say thank you very much for tuning in today. This webinar will be available on demand for the next 12 months, so please do forward it on to anybody who you think would be interested. Please leave some feedback through the box on your screen. I would just like to say apologies for any technical issues we've experienced. I have been in touch with the provider of the webinar, and they explained to me they've had some technical problems, but hopefully you have enjoyed the webinar. I would just like to thank the speakers once again. We have Alessia Parassina, Angela La Marca, and Guido Chiavelli. And I would like to thank Brandstock for their support today. As you should be able to see on your screen, Angela's email address and the Brandstock website are available there to see. We have brandstock.com, so please go and visit that website. And Angela's email address is parassina@brandstock.com. So again, if you have any questions for Alessia, would you please email her? Thank you very much. Please keep your eyes open for future webinars from WIPR, and we do hope you'll join us again. Thank you very much.